Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt like an outsider, even when everyone was friendly? Maybe you've changed schools, jobs, cities, friend groups, even relationships. Yet somehow, the same feeling follows you. You connect for a while, you adapt, you try to belong. But eventually, something feels off. You begin to wonder if everyone else received a social rulebook you somehow missed. Here's the unsettling truth. For some people, never fitting in isn't bad luck, poor social skills, or personality flaws. It's often the result of something much deeper. Your brain may have been shaped by experiences that taught you, long ago, that belonging wasn't safe. And if that's true, you could spend years trying to force yourself into groups that were never designed for who you truly are. The frightening part? Most people never realize this. They spend decades blaming themselves. But what if the very thing that makes you feel different is also the source of your greatest strength? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this happens and how to take back control. Because the hidden reason some people never fit in anywhere isn't what most people think. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people believe fitting in is simple. They assume that if you struggle socially, you just need more confidence, better communication skills, or a different group of friends. But psychology tells a different story. Human beings evolved to survive in tribes. For thousands of years, being excluded from the group could literally mean death. Your ancestors depended on social acceptance for protection, food, and survival. As a result, your brain developed incredibly sensitive systems designed to detect rejection. Yet not everyone's brain calibrates those systems in the same way. Research shows that early experiences dramatically influence how safe or unsafe social connection feels. If you grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, criticism was common, emotions were dismissed, or you had to constantly adapt to other people's expectations, your brain learned a powerful lesson. Being fully myself is risky. Children are remarkably adaptable. If authenticity threatens connection, they don't stop seeking connection. They stop being authentic. Over time, many people become social chameleons. They adjust their personality depending on who's around. They mirror behaviors. They hide opinions. They become whoever they need to be in order to avoid rejection. On the surface, this looks like social intelligence. Underneath, it can create a devastating problem. If nobody ever sees the real you, genuine belonging becomes impossible. Think about that. You can be surrounded by friends, coworkers, even family, and still feel profoundly alone. Not because people rejected you, because they never truly met you. Psychologists call this incongruence, the painful gap between your authentic self and the self you present to the world. The larger that gap becomes, the stronger the feeling that you don't fit in anywhere. Another hidden factor is heightened sensitivity. Many people who feel different possess unusually high levels of emotional awareness, creativity, empathy, or deep thinking. Studies suggest highly sensitive individuals process information more intensely than average. They notice subtle changes in tone. They detect hidden tensions. They think deeply about meaning, identity, and purpose. While these traits can become extraordinary strengths, they often create friction in environments that reward conformity, speed, and superficial interaction. You may not be broken. You may simply be operating on a different psychological frequency. But when you spend years comparing yourself to people wired differently, self-doubt grows. Eventually, you stop asking, "Where do I belong?" and start asking, "What's wrong with me?" That question can quietly shape an entire life. And here's where it gets really dark. To understand why this happens, you need to understand how your brain builds social reality. Imagine your brain as a prediction machine. Its primary job isn't to make you happy. Its primary job is to keep you safe. At the center of this system sits a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala acts like an internal smoke detector. When it senses danger, it activates survival responses long before you're consciously aware of them. For someone with repeated experiences of rejection, criticism, bullying, emotional unpredictability, or social exclusion, the amygdala can become especially sensitive. It starts interpreting ordinary social situations as potential threats. A delayed text message feels alarming. An awkward silence feels significant. A neutral facial expression feels like disapproval. Your conscious mind may know nothing terrible is happening, but your nervous system responds as if social danger is everywhere. Then there's the prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning part of your brain. Under normal circumstances, The prefrontal cortex helps regulate emotions, evaluate evidence, and challenge irrational fears. But when the amygdala repeatedly signals danger, it can overwhelm the prefrontal cortex. This creates a vicious cycle. You enter social situations already anticipating rejection. Your brain selectively notices signs that confirm those fears. You withdraw, mask, or overanalyze. And because authentic connection becomes harder, your fears seem validated. The brain says, "See? I was right." The cycle continues. Another major player is the brain's dopamine system. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that's misleading. Dopamine primarily drives motivation and reward prediction. When social experiences consistently lead to discomfort, embarrassment, or disappointment, your brain may begin associating social engagement with low reward. In other words, isolation starts feeling safer and more predictable. Even if loneliness hurts, familiarity can still feel comforting. That's why some people desperately crave connection while simultaneously avoiding it. They're fighting two competing survival systems. But perhaps the most fascinating mechanism involves something called the default mode network, or DMN. The default mode network becomes active when your mind turns inward, during self-reflection, daydreaming, or thinking about yourself and others. Highly introspective individuals often have very active default mode networks. This can be a gift. It's associated with creativity, self-awareness, imagination, and deep insight. However, when combined with social insecurity, the DMN can become a relentless narrator. You replay conversations. You analyze every interaction. You wonder what others think. You imagine alternative scenarios. Hours after a simple conversation, your mind may still be reviewing it. It's like having an internal documentary crew constantly filming and editing your social life. Exhausting. But here's the critical insight. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you using outdated information. It learned certain rules years ago and continues applying them automatically. The good news? Neuroscience consistently shows that the brain remains adaptable throughout life. This ability is called neuroplasticity. New experiences can literally reshape neural pathways. Old predictions can be updated. Safety can be relearned. Belonging can be redefined. So if your brain is already wired this way, what can possibly change it? The answer is simpler and more surprising than you think. The first step is surprisingly counterintuitive. 1. Stop trying to fit in everywhere. Most people who feel different make the same mistake. They attempt universal acceptance. But psychology shows that strong belonging doesn't come from being accepted by everyone. It comes from being deeply accepted by the right people. Trying to fit everywhere forces constant self-editing. Instead, ask yourself, where can I be more myself? Maybe it's a creative community, a volunteer organization, a niche hobby group, or a few trusted friends. Why does this work? Because authenticity reduces the gap between your inner and outer self. When that gap shrinks, loneliness decreases. For example, someone who spent years masking their interests at work might finally join a local hiking club or writing group and immediately experience a sense of ease they've never felt before. Nothing changed about them. The environment changed. 2. Practice gradual authenticity. If you've hidden parts of yourself for years, radical honesty overnight can feel terrifying. Your nervous system may interpret authenticity as danger. Instead, use gradual exposure. Share one genuine opinion. Express one preference. Reveal one personal interest. Allow people to see small pieces of the real you. Each positive experience provides new evidence to your brain. Over time, your amygdala updates its predictions. Authenticity begins to feel safer. Imagine someone who always says, "I don't care where we eat." One day, they simply say, "I'd actually love Italian food." It sounds trivial, but small acts of self-expression retrain the brain. 3. Regulate your nervous system before social situations. Many social struggles aren't cognitive problems. They're physiological problems. When your nervous system enters threat mode, clear thinking becomes difficult. Simple science-backed practices can help. Slow breathing, physical exercise, adequate sleep, mindfulness meditation. Even a 10-minute walk before a social event can lower stress hormones. Why does this matter? Because a calmer body sends safety signals to the brain, and a brain that feels safe interprets social situations more accurately. Professional athletes prepare physically before performance. Social connection deserves the same preparation. 4. Challenge the stories your mind automatically creates. Remember the default mode network? Its narratives aren't always facts. Your friend canceled dinner. Your brain says, they don't want to see me. But alternative explanations exist. They're tired. They're overwhelmed. They're busy. Cognitive behavioral therapy research repeatedly demonstrates that questioning automatic thoughts reduces anxiety and improves emotional well-being. Ask yourself, what evidence supports this thought? What evidence contradicts it? What would I tell a friend in this situation? This activates the prefrontal cortex and weakens fear-based assumptions. 5. Redefine belonging itself. Perhaps the most powerful shift is realizing that belonging isn't conformity. True belonging means being accepted without abandoning yourself. You do not need to shrink, perform, or constantly adapt to deserve connection. In fact, the qualities that once made you feel different, depth, sensitivity, curiosity, independence, may become the exact traits that attract your people. Many innovators, artists, entrepreneurs, and leaders spent years feeling like outsiders. Their difference wasn't a defect, it was data. It pointed them toward lives that didn't fit conventional expectations. The goal isn't becoming someone who fits everywhere. No one does. The goal is becoming someone who belongs deeply somewhere while remaining fully themselves. But none of this matters unless you understand one final truth almost nobody talks about. Here's the final truth. Feeling like you never fit in can become part of your identity. And identities are powerful. If you've spent years telling yourself, I'm the outsider, your brain begins filtering reality through that story. You may overlook acceptance, dismiss kindness, distance yourself before others can. Not because you want loneliness, because familiar identities feel safe. But identities can change. The moment you stop asking, how do I make everyone accept me? And start asking, where can I be most myself? Everything shifts. Think back to the beginning of this video. You may have believed there was something fundamentally wrong with you. Maybe you've carried that belief for years. Yet the hidden reason some people never fit in often has far less to do with who they are and far more to do with what their brains learned. And what the brain learns, the brain can relearn. You are not locked into old patterns. You are not required to spend your life performing for acceptance. You can build relationships rooted in honesty instead of adaptation. You can create communities instead of chasing approval. You can belong without disappearing. And sometimes, the people who never fit neatly into existing boxes become the very people who build new ones. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to Simple Ways of Life because we're exploring the psychology, neuroscience, and hidden patterns shaping human behavior every single week. Also, share your experience in the comments. Have you ever felt like you never truly fit in anywhere? Reading those stories may help someone realize they're not alone in what they're experiencing. And if you want to understand another powerful psychological pattern that's quietly controlling your life, watch the next video on your screen right now. Because the way you see yourself may be changing more than you realize.